Two people can't report. I don't want to talk about it. All right? I explain everything pregame to a T. Okay? I did that. 70 reported, 58 didn't, or 68 didn't. We threw it to 68. That was the explanation.
Welcome to this latest edition of the Real Deal Podcast, episode 941 of the Real Deal Podcast. Of course, Happy New Year. I'm your host, Cyril Gerald Quinn. Our first episode of 2024. Yeah, this is me live, basically live. It is certainly great to be back. As you can see, working here, a little bit rusty here. You gotta bear with me to have recorded a podcast. What, 3 weeks? When was our last podcast? December 12th. I think it was December 12th. So it's been a minute, to say the least. I hope everybody out there enjoyed the holiday season. Back to work, back to reality. And again, I hope everybody enjoyed the holiday season. It was, it was relaxing as well as difficult to be away this long, to be honest with you, for the podcast, from you guys in particular. But I'm certainly excited about 2024 and what this podcast is becoming. And it's going to be a great year. Come back. I felt like we coming back at a perfect time, to be honest with you. Week 18 of the NFL season. We're going to look back at week 17 and preview week 18, as we are just a couple of weeks away from the playoffs beginning, or playoffs will begin basically next week, next Saturday. But a lot to go over before we get to that. As always, we're going to begin with our themes: the good, the bad, the ugly. We'll talk about the red-hot Baltimore Ravens and their MVP, soon-to-be MVP, Lamar Jackson, as well as the ugly, the situation that transpired in Dallas with the officials and that situation, which, if you are a Lions fan, you certainly won't get over that anytime soon, considering how that went down. All the thoughts. It's simply Miami week for the Buffalo Bills. Buffalo Bills won their fourth straight game over the New England Patriots. It was not easy by any stretch of imagination. 27-21. Buffalo's defense did enough defensively. Of course, New England is playing basically with a kind of like it might as well be the strike season for in terms of some of their personnel. They have just no weapons, running backs at the skill positions whatsoever. They are playing hard defensively, though. New England, if you look at New England over the last 5 to 6 weeks, they've been competitive in most of these games, despite just a absolute deficit in terms of talent, a void of talent. Buffalo was able to get by. Rasul Douglas made had a big game. He, of course, they got him during the trade. They got him, of course, in a trade with Green Bay back in October. We knew that probably would that move would pay off, as we've seen him make some big plays for the Green Bay Packers a couple of years ago down the stretch in their playoff run. And I think he made it. I think he made the Pro Bowl that year. I think it was 2021. He had a big year. So he made some big plays for a defense that's been decimated with injuries. And Buffalo, this is not about, it wasn't a thing of beauty. The bottom line is Buffalo formula has been for Buffalo, because Josh Allen actually was bad this game. Probably one of the worst games he's played during this win streak. Probably the worst game he's played during this win streak, but it didn't matter. They ran the ball 37 times. 127 yards. They defensively made enough plays to to get this victory, and they were never in any serious jeopardy of losing this game, even at 27-21. Excuse me, you never got the thought, or you never felt like the New England Patriots were ever going to win this game in Buffalo. The Bills again win their fourth straight. Simply put it, the Bills control their own destiny. If they win, they'll have Miami this week. They win, they're in. If they lose, then their destiny will be in the hands of some other teams. I'm not even getting into all the permutations and playoff scenarios. We'll discuss that later on in terms of what's going to be on the line as far as the divisions go. But I'm not even. There's so many possibilities still left in week 7 and week 18 that I'm not even going to get into all that. But they will be playing the Miami Dolphins in Miami. And the division title will be on the line. It's a remarkable comeback turn of events for the Buffalo Bills. At 6-6, a lot of people thought there were many who completely wrote this team off, rightfully so. I told you they were 6-6. I think their last loss was the Philadelphia Eagles, and I thought that I saw some things in that game that could possibly, turn around their season. That there's some things that I saw in that game that made me feel good about the team moving forward. Now, did I think that they were going to win 4 straight, possibly 5 straight? Probably not. I thought that realistically that they probably would go 3-2 and come up short at 9-8. But now they have a chance to go 11-6, and which would get them into the playoffs, or they can go they can even go 10-7 and not make the playoffs. So Buffalo is where you want to be coming into this week 18, and that is controlling your own destiny. They're playing good football. If they do get in the playoffs, no one will want to see this team. This is a team that has been, into conference championship as a group. This is a team that has been to, numerous playoff appearances with the Josh Allen, Sean McDermott, Stephon Diggs in that era with that particular group. So no one in the conference wants to see this team in the playoffs. No way, in no way, shape, or form, to be honest with you. They're playing their best football at the right time. As far as their identity, they've kind of brought back, a sense of physicality. Again, offensively, they're going to have to revamp their offense still in the offseason. Right now, they're doing it. They're kind of doing it with spit and glue. All right, we're going to run the ball, but even still, there's still some things about the passing game and about Josh Allen and how there's certain things that could be fixed, and that they'll have an entire offseason to fix from that standpoint. But the most important part to me in watching the Bills over the last course of this last month is the physicality. At the beginning of the year, when they were playing their best football, when they were playing good, decent football, not great, but when they had success, it was with their physicality. We thought, along with, it's amazing how things changed. We thought, along with the likes of Kansas City, Philadelphia, Baltimore, and San Francisco, that they were amongst the most physical teams in the NFL, and they lost that for a lot of the season. That's something that they regained that physicality, and it's come with running the football. It's come with absolutely running the football. James Cook, not dependent on Josh Allen to run the football, even though he had 44 yards this game. He had 44 yards and probably 11 carries. This is probably too many. You want to keep it in that 5 to 8, 5 to 10 range, but those are like some of the runs and he had a couple touchdowns. So, some of those runs were excusable from the standpoint of he did score touchdowns. He was able to score a touchdown, but for the most part, they've had success running the football with their running backs, and that brings about this team looks ready to go to the playoffs. This team looks ready, like they're ready to they're made for the playoffs as far as from a physical standpoint. And if you notice, in the NFL down the stretch, one of the teams that are having the most success: Baltimore, Cleveland, San Francisco, even the Rams when they're playing. These are the teams that it is clearly the teams that are the most physical, that are having the most success, especially in playing the best football right now, without question. So even Dallas has got more physical than they have in previous years with how they're playing football. So that has returned from the Buffalo Bills. There's a sense of identity. They have a sense of purpose, and they are one win away from really making one of the more remarkable, not gonna say more remarkable runs in their season, but really doing something that I didn't think that they were capable of doing. To be honest with you, like I said, I thought that there was potential that they could turn this thing around, but it doesn't mean I believe it was going to happen. So they'll have to do it on the road. They'll have to do it against a division opponent, but we'll see what happens as they get ready to face their long-time divisional rival, the Miami Dolphins. And also, one last thing on the Bills, as these wins have piled up in the last month, the production of Stephon Diggs has dropped. That is something that certainly will have to be addressed in the offseason. Like, you can't tell me that, Stephon Diggs has to become not a decoy, and you could still be physical and still have a steady dose of Stephon Diggs. Like, so that's something that has to be remedied in the offseason. I don't think Stephon Diggs is, I don't think Stephon Diggs is a decline. But again, that goes back to what we mentioned. We've been talking about the majority of the season about the lack of offensive identity and just the lack of organization within that in terms of how they want to play offense. So that's definitely something. Again, his numbers have dropped, especially during this win streak. But that's something that's going to have to be addressed. Diggs is playing the good soldier and playing the team guy, but that guy should be getting the ball a lot. Like, I want the ball in Stephon Diggs' hands. It's not like, Travis Kelce is on a decline. Stephon Diggs is still, to me, a legitimately top 5, top 8 receiver in this league when he's used correctly. So I want to keep that in mind. We're going to deep dive the Ravens. The Ravens right now, without question, are the best team in football. They clinch the AFC as far as home field advantage. They will have a bye week. They will have a bye week for the first weekend of the playoffs. So in essence, they really could take off this week when they face the Steelers, and in essence, they could have almost 3 weeks off if they choose so. Now, here's the thing. You got to be very careful. I've seen teams. You have a quarterback that likes to run, even though he's not running as much as he has in the past. He's still one of the more mobile quarterbacks in the league. I probably would play him a half and then sit him down at halftime. But it's just something that doesn't sit right with me with my quarterback having 3 weeks that much time off. Like this, and I believe I've seen a number of these teams get picked off in that divisional round, and you're only gonna have to. Sure, you take the rest, you get some guys healthy, you get some guys healthy. That's fine. You still take the bye because it means you have home field, and it means that you want to be fresh during this at this time of year. Talking January week. By the time that comes up, it'll be week 20. The divisional round will be week 20 of the NFL season. So you have a major advantage versus these other teams as far as how fresh your team will be. But again, considering that this game, if they chose to, you gotta be careful about that rust factor because I do believe that that's a real thing. Because next thing you know, you get in a divisional round, you can be down 17-0 before you blink, before the national anthem is over. I've seen a lot of teams, a number of these teams go down in the divisional round, coming off that bye, just and getting that got off to just bad starts. So just keep that in mind for this game. But I want to deep dive the Ravens of this year versus the Ravens 2019. 2019, that's the last season where they were considered to be a Super Bowl contender, a legit Super Bowl contender. They were 14-2 that season. They won 11 straight to end that season. And of course, the common denominator in that season versus this season was Lamar Jackson. That season, Lamar Jackson was, I believe, unanimous MVP. I know he won MVP. I believe he was unanimous. 36 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, 1,200 yards rushing that season. He just was overwhelming that season. They scored well over 500 points. Offensively, defensively, their point differential was about the same. It was about the same as it was. The point differential was about the same for this year versus last year. Excuse me, this year versus 2020. This year versus 2019. The major difference to me, and this is why I feel better about this team than I felt about that team that particular year, of course, is Lamar Jackson. This is where you have to just ignore stats and just actually have to like watch the game. He was so by far a better player than he was 4 years ago. It's not even close. Don't even the stats. His stats are better than that in 2019. Of course, his numbers are better. All around, quarterback rating, touchdowns, every stat you look at. The important stat to me to compare is he goes into this final game with 821 yards rushing, right? 821 yards rushing versus and by the way, it would be, if he plays, it would be 17 games versus a 16-game season where he had 1,200 yards rushing. So that dip in rushing is extremely important. It's a very important number because what it tells you is how much he's matured and developed as a passer, particularly a passer in the pocket. His level of comfort, I went back and I was just curious about, because it's a short body at work, but he has not had the success in the playoffs. I went back and watched some highlights of that Tennessee playoff game, which they lost 28-12 and back in 19. And that game, he was awful in that game. He got knocked. Tennessee, of course, Vrabel had a perfect defensive plan. They kept him in the pocket for the most part. They made him throw from the pocket. He was sacked 4 times. He had 3 interceptions. They sacked him a bunch of times. Now again, he put up big numbers, but that game was over. He had over 143 yards rushing and 360 yards passing. But those were empty calorie numbers. Those numbers didn't mean anything because the game was over. That game, they were playing come from behind, and at that point, when he had all that rushing yards, it just didn't matter. But in that game, when I look back and looked at it, he was so robotic in the pocket. It was one read. It was stare down the receiver. He didn't look comfortable. He did not. There was no fluid. He wasn't fluid whatsoever. He was just. It was almost like I said, he looked robotic. He looked robotic in the pocket versus, again, it is night and day how he looks in the pocket now versus then. It's not even close. That is the difference to me when I compare these Ravens versus the Ravens of 2019. Because defensively, they were great then. They were excellent defensively that year. They're excellent defensively. They're one of the best defenses this year. This year, of course. And of course, I mean, you saw what they did to San Francisco on that Christmas night, which was a masterpiece of a defensive performance. That was way too much on Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy didn't do this. No, they were on his ass. And that was a great, great defensive performance by Baltimore. It wasn't about what Brock Purdy did do. It was about what they did do, in my opinion. But their defense is about the same as it was was back in 2019. He is the difference. He is why they're favored to get to the Super Bowl and favored to and should be favored to win the Super Bowl. Even though listen, I don't think I really think if you make it to the playoffs this year that you should feel good because I don't as well as the Ravens are playing, as well as the 49ers have played, there's no dominant team. There's no team that's scared. There's none of these teams scare me. Even the Ravens, I'll be honest with you, even the Ravens don't scare me. I just don't think there's a dominant team this year. But getting back to Lamar Jackson, I have way, and I said this earlier in the season, I have way more confidence in this team now than I did in 2019 because of him. Like I said, he's just a completely different player, and you could just see it. You could see, the things that he does, that he's done in the pocket, and he's picking and choosing his spots in terms of when to run. He genuinely is looking to pass first and run second. Now, again, he still has the ability to break a 30-yard run out of nowhere. That is still there, without question. But I'm telling you right now, he's just a completely different player. And that's why I like these Ravens in 23 more than I liked the Ravens of 2019 that were 14-2. Game of the week, Dallas gets by Detroit 20-19. This was a very, very good game, to say the least. Now, again, it's one of these games where I think that what happened at the end kind of took away from actually how good this game was. Because there were a lot of good things. This game was good. You can make a case that one of our things was the good, the bad, the ugly. Well, this game had the good, the bad, and the ugly all in one football game. You had Dak Prescott playing basically, minus the one interception, basically lights out football, throwing the ball well. CeeDee Lamb was the best player on the field, along with the Aiden Hutchinson, who was the Detroit defensive end, who was just all over the place. But probably you would say CeeDee Lamb was the best player on the field, and Detroit, to me, showed you learned a lot about Detroit in this game. Now, we get right to let's just get right to it as far as the officiating and what transpired. I don't care if Detroit's deception was so good that it fooled the officials. Along with Brad Allen, you as an official have been around long enough and should be have a high level of understanding of what is going on in terms of what the Detroit Lions are trying to do. Everybody on that field, Decker, Jared Goff says Decker reported, which Decker, who is number 68, reported to the official. Everybody seems to say it, seems to have believe it or say it, except the official who stuck to the story even during the interview process. But all you gotta do is look at the video, and you saw 68. You saw 68 going towards the official. Now, again, I've heard excuses made for the officials, how loud it is. There were two people walking towards him. Your job as an official, and Gene Salvatore, if I pronounced that right, CBS was very clear about it. He says, first of all, two people can report. So even then, again, this is where there was a lot of confusion when this happened. Like when this happened this game was Saturday night, and I went to bed still not figuring out what the hell I just saw or what had transpired in terms of this rule. to be honest with you. But as we come to find out, two people can report. So even Dan Campbell was wrong about that. He said he was told that two people can report, that two people cannot report. Well, that's not true. That you would go on later on to find out. But the bottom line is, Gene Salvatore had it said the best the following day on CBS. Your job as the official is to know that, make direct eye contact with the guy that is reporting. It's just that simple. And it seems like they were trying to take this official off the hook from the standpoint of saying, well, he saw two guys coming towards him and maybe he mistaked Decker for number 70, whatever. It's inexcusable. It's a reason why that crew will be downgraded, won't be doing a playoff game this year. That's how bad egregious this mistake is. You never see the NFL rarely goes this hard towards the official, penalizes their fishing crew to this level. You rarely see this. This has not happened often. It's happened before, so this is not something new. But that's how egregious the missed call was. The call was, because in essence, now it doesn't guarantee Detroit would have won that game. They would have been up by 1 point, and Dallas still had their timeouts and with 23 seconds left, and who knows? And they have an all-world field goal kicker. But the ramifications of that possibly, are major when you're talking about the difference between a number 2 and a number 3 seed. Detroit wins this game. They are, in essence, would be in position to be a number 2 seed. They would not, at the end, they would have, they would have been, in essence, a number 2 seed. And if I'm not mistaken, they would have put the heat on San Francisco. I think San Francisco would have had to win this week. So that, like, the ramifications of that cannot be, you can't just ignore them. That who knows? Detroit, that in essence could have possibly cost Detroit a number 1 seed. They would have been, like, not saying they would have gotten number 1 seed, but they would have been in position. They would have had a chance. But that's a call that you can't miss as an NFL official. You just can't miss that whatsoever. So again, I don't care. I heard, you hear the stuff. I heard, what you heard was that the Detroit deception was so good that they fooled the officials. The officials shouldn't be fooled. That's why they get paid. They are paid officials. These are paid professionals. This is, they're not full time, which is another story. But this official, I guarantee you, this is not the first time that this officiating crew has dealt with the situation of having a man report and having another guy come in having another guy come at him or walk towards him so that they don't give away the fact of who they want to throw the ball to. This is not the first time that situation has happened. I promise you. It's just the fact that the other times the officials actually got it right and we didn't notice it. Offensive linemen report all the time in those goal-to-go situations. All the time. It happens way more than what you think it does. Because the bottom line is these guys are better. These guys are great athletes on the offensive line. Like they are. In 2023, these guys can catch the ball. They besides blocking, but these guys actually can catch the ball. And again, it's another thing that the defense has to worry about in a tough place to score down once you get down to the 2 between the 2-yard line and the goal line. So there's no excuse for the official to miss that call. Zero excuse. I don't care how good the deception was for the Detroit Lions. Detroit Lions did everything that they were supposed to do in that situation, and they have, Dan Campbell has every right to be pissed off, as he was in the post game. Every single right to be pissed off. And again, it's one of those things where it's happened again. It's happened. This play has happened so many times. You'll be surprised if you really, took the time to see how many times that this play has happened over the course of an NFL season. It happens all the time. You just don't notice it because, again, the officials mainly, for the most part, get it right. So, with that being said, that call, frankly, took both coaches off the hook because there were some mistakes made by both coaches that were like inexcusable. First of all, if you're Mike McCarthy, 2nd and 14, right? Even before Detroit got the ball in that last possession to go to possibly to tie the game, like what could have been a game tying touchdown or go ahead touchdown and 2-point conversion. Dallas had a chance to run a lot of clock off, a lot of time off the clock. They go they have a 2nd and 14 incomplete pass, which stops the clock. Detroit smartly uses all their timeouts, and they had plenty of time left. They had plenty of time once they got the ball back. They should have had at least 40 seconds less than they had in getting the ball back. Like, you can't, like, your ideal is you're trying to run. Now, sure, you're trying to make a team use all their timeouts, which they did in that case. You're also trying to run as much time off the clock as possible. If you're Dallas, you're winning the game. The clock is your friend. Okay. And Mike McCarthy, again, sometimes thinks he's smarter in the game. We've seen McCarthy with clock management in the past be just god awful in the playoffs, regular season, what have you. This is why I don't trust Dallas. I don't trust McCarthy. I just don't. Because they don't understand as a team, as an organization, coaching staff, they don't understand situational football. They just don't. That was an egregious mistake. You can't make that mistake. You have to run the time off the clock and give Detroit as little time as possible to go down the field, especially on the road. You have home field advantage at that point. So you have the crowd. They have no timeouts. You have the crowd noise. So you have the crowd noise. You have everything going for you in that moment, and you take them off the hook by throwing an incomplete pass on 2nd and 14. Run the ball. You're not trying to get a first down in that situation. You are trying to run clock. If you get a first down by running the ball, then cool. And again, it's not a situation where, like I said, there's no way on 2nd and 14 that I'm throwing the ball. I'm just not. I don't care if the team does have the 3 timeouts. I'm going to force them to use all those timeouts. Man, mind you, they're trying to hold on to those timeouts because they feel like they're going to get the ball back. So they're trying to keep at least one of those timeouts in their pockets. They really don't want to use all those timeouts. If they can avoid to, if they can. But again, there should have been at least 30 to 40 seconds left. Like that, Detroit should not have had that much time once they got the ball back. They shouldn't, not even close to that much time that they had to get the ball back and go down the field. Dan Campbell, again, Dan Campbell has done a phenomenal job. He has helped change the culture of that team. There's a belief that they play hard. They've improved defensively. They've survived an in-season football crisis from the standpoint of, they lose to the Bears. They get smacked on Thanksgiving Day by the Packers. You're saying, okay, Detroit is done as far as they can't be taken serious as a contender. They'll make the playoffs, but they'll be one and done, not taking them serious. They've rebounded in the last couple of weeks and actually played some good football and easily could have won against Dallas. I was impressed by them in this game. Their ability to run the ball, their physicality. I thought their defense, for the most part, outside of what had transpired with CeeDee Lamb, played well. You held Dallas to 20 points when Dallas had been averaging 40 over the course of the first seven home games. There are a lot of good things that I liked about Detroit in this game. The one thing I didn't like was Dan Campbell, sticking to his guns and being overly too aggressive. When you get a penalty, right, and you get pushed after he gets the penalty, which was a horrible call, we know this, about the illegal touching, the ball gets pushed back to the 7-yard line, right? At that point, just kick the extra point. Just kick the, come on, man. Just kick the, at that point, and then they got actually bailed out They got bailed out by a Dallas penalty and still were never. And then you had a bad throw by Goff. So they were playing. They had 3 opportunities to kick the extra point. The first time, I get it, not to kick the extra point. You scored a touchdown. The game should have been. You should have had the lead. First and goal, or at once you get that penalty and they had the ball at the 7-yard line, you have to kick the extra point. At that point, like at that point, you're just being you cut your nose to spite your face. At that point, you gotta just kick the extra point. I mean, just like I didn't understand. Like, I think that was just your pride and your emotion can get in the way of just of sound judgment. Campbell's still a relatively young coach. This is only I think this is his 3rd year. Yeah, it's only his 3rd year. They've gotten better each year, to his credit. Again, he has shifted the culture. He's holding people accountable. There's a physicality. So listen, at the beginning, me and Rob Sapp were making fun of Dan Campbell, rightfully so at the time, with the biting the ankles and with some of the stuff that was coming out of his mouth. I can't say I gotta give him. I have to tip my hat. I can no longer make fun of him. He's not a laughing stock anymore. He's a real legit NFL coach. Who's very good. But this is again a part of his process as far as in order for this franchise to get to the next level, and for him to get to the next level as a coach, he's got to put away the emotion and start becoming more strategic and more like more of a chess master, more of a tactician. The emotion emotion can only get you so far in the NFL. Emotion will get you to the playoffs and then get you beat in the playoffs. So if they're thinking about making a run in the playoffs in the future, Campbell's got to grow from that and just kick the extra point. Like, it's just that simple. No one's going to knock you for kicking the extra point with having the ball at your first and goal, not first and goal, but having the ball from your 7-yard line. That's a long way for a 2-point conversion. 7 yards is an eternity for a 2-point conversion. Now, again, when Dallas got a penalty because again, typical Dallas, Michael Parsons was offsides, a penalty that you absolutely can't get in that situation. So that moved it to back to the 2-yard line. At that point, I was like, fine, yeah, go for it, because that's you're back at the 2-point. You're back within where you originally were at. I had no problem at that point, but when that ball was at the 7-yard line, you got to kick the extra point. So that game had a lot. It was a fun game to watch. Again, both coaches were taken off the hook. Dallas gutted out a win where if you're Dallas, you feel good because you didn't have to score 1 million points at home to win a game. You won a game with you won a close game where you had to make some plays, and you won where you had to gut it out. So you can feel good from that standpoint. If you're Detroit, you probably felt like you should have won the game altogether. I felt like you should have won the game. Your defense certainly played well enough. Goff was not good in this game at all. But you do feel confident that you have a game that could travel if you do have to play San Francisco or Dallas on the road. They'll be very confident if they have to play Dallas again. They'll be extremely confident in Dallas, knowing what almost transpired. They get a little bit better effort out of Goff. Who knows what can happen? Goff was not good in this game, but you understand that you know what the recipe is against Dallas. And that's to run the football. Detroit ran the ball for 125 yards in this game. So fun game to watch. A lot to unpack. The officials, you can't make that mistake. You just can't do it. You can't. We're gonna do. Go back here. We're going to go to stock up, stock down. We're going to have some fun with this. I'm only going to deal with the playoff teams, right? The teams that have clinched playoff spots. So in the AFC, Ravens, Dolphins, Chiefs, Browns, Ravens. So you have Ravens, Dolphins, Chiefs, Browns. Ravens, of course, in the 1 seed. Browns are locked into. I believe the Browns are locked into the 5th seed because they're in the same division as Baltimore. So the 1st and 5th seeds are locked in from the AFC. NFC, Niners, Cowboys, Lions, Eagles, and the Rams. The Niners, of course, are the one seed, and I believe that the Rams are locked in. Similar to Cleveland, I believe that the Rams are also locked in to that number 5 seed. I could be wrong about that. I believe that they are locked into that number 5 seed. Whatever. So you have 9 of the 14 teams that have clinched playoff berths. And I want to do some stock up, stock down on these teams. So I would say we'll do a stock down first. How about that? Let's do stock down. Because stock down is more fascinating to me. Stock way, way down has to be the Philadelphia Eagles. And this is like a historical stock down. This is a different type of stock down. The Philadelphia Eagles, of course, lost to New England, to the Arizona Cardinals 35-31, a game that they were fully in control in for the most part, most of the game up until like the fourth quarter. Arizona did whatever they wanted to in the second half. In particular, they ran the ball down the Eagles' throats. They did whatever they wanted to offensively to the Eagles' defense. We know the Eagles' defense has been just bad this entire year, and it's gotten worse as the year has gone along. The Eagles at one point in the season were 10-1. They had 5 losses, so they've lost 4 out of their last 5 games. They are the first team in 35 years to start our season off 10-1. To start our season off 10-1 and have 5 or more losses. It just doesn't happen. Teams that start off 10-1 are normally either at worst conference championship, if not Super Bowl championship teams. That's just how it goes. You start off 10-1, that means chances are you are a dominant football team. And I talked about the physicality of the Buffalo Bills. Well, the Eagles were absolutely punked in this game. They've been punked against San Francisco. They got punked against Dallas. The Giants were able to even put up some decent numbers against them. Like, the Eagles have been getting outgained by these teams and at well over 100, around 100 to 150 yards. And that's because their defense cannot get off the field. That game against the Buffalo Bills a few weeks ago, I think that was week 12 or 13. It was about 5 weeks ago. And Buffalo had well over 500 yards of offense. And even in victory, you said, oh, Buffalo, I actually liked Buffalo coming out this game more than I liked Philadelphia. And what happens is you're not as good defensively. They've had their defensive coordinators reassigned with the play calling. You had a situation where, there's video of Nick Sirianni yelling at the linebackers coach. So they're in turmoil from a defensive standpoint. And offensively, they're not quite on the level that they were last year. They're still very good because they're still putting up 30 points on a given day. They're still averaging about 27 points a game. So it's not like the wheels are falling off offensively, but they're not. AJ Brown hasn't been happy for the past couple of weeks. Even in victory, there's still something off with their offense a little bit. They can't run the ball. They're not. That's the thing. They haven't been able to run the ball effectively this year versus last year. But even overall production, points wise, the offense has not really been the problem in my opinion. Like Jalen Hurts has not played quite up to where he was MVP runner up. He hasn't been terrible. But again, the offense has been bad. It has dropped down enough. It's been off enough to where it makes a difference when your defense is god awful. And right now, again, that defense, they're not going anywhere with that defense. And to a point to where you basically have Philadelphia fans, Philadelphia media, and even national media basically have written the obituary on the Philadelphia Eagles season. And this is a team that has clinched a playoff spot. Like I said, and I'll say this during the podcast, and I'll say this during the season, you get in the playoffs, just get in the playoffs. You get in the playoffs, you have a quality quarterback, you have a good culture, you know how to win. Anything can happen. That's minus the Philadelphia Eagles. I don't feel that way about the Philadelphia Eagles. The Eagles could easily be a one and done. Easily. Doesn't matter. Like, I don't care who they play. That's how bad their defense is right now. That level of physicality, that level of intimidation that they had on both sides of this line of scrimmage is gone. Their defense is awful, and their offensive line can't run the football. So if you can't run the football, that eliminates part of your identity as a physical football team, period. So this is something that you just don't see. You don't see a team get off to this kind of start, and the wheels come off, unless your quarterback goes down. Jalen Hurts has been relatively healthy, so that's not the case. And they still have AJ Brown, they still have Devontae Smith, so they still have some of their main weapons. But this team right now is like a dead man walking. Like they are absolutely waiting to be put out of their misery. There's nothing that will tell you that this team will do anything in the playoffs. There's nothing to tell you that. As far as stock up, the team that's going in the opposite direction, and the team that is probably one of the more dangerous teams in the playoffs, are the Cleveland Browns. The Cleveland Browns are 11-5. They are on their fourth quarterback, and the Cleveland Browns legitimately have a chance not only to do some damage in the playoffs. I believe the Cleveland Browns are the biggest threat to the Baltimore Ravens, to be honest with you. And I believe the Cleveland Browns absolutely can win a Super Bowl. You have a situation where you have a great defense. We know they can run the ball. And now at the core, you have a quarterback. You're going to have coming into these playoffs this season. When the playoffs begin, there will be two quarterbacks in the AFC who have Super Bowl experience, who have taken their teams to a Super Bowl and won a Super Bowl MVP. It's Patrick Mahomes and that's Joe Flacco. And that is an enormous advantage, especially in a year where there's no dominant teams. In a year where you're going to have a bunch of unproven quarterbacks. You're going to have some unproven quarterbacks in some of these spots. Or you're going to have quarterbacks whose teams around them are just not as talented or not as good as they have been in the past, i.e. the Kansas City Chiefs and the Philadelphia Eagles. To have a guy like Joe Flacco, who's been there, done that, is an enormous advantage. And again, Cleveland, they were Baltimore's last loss, that wild 33-31 game. I believe that was in Baltimore. It was in Baltimore. Divisional rival. They will not be afraid of it. They face Baltimore. That's a team, if you're Baltimore, that you don't want to see in the divisional round. That's not like that. You're fine if you see them in the conference championship because you'll have a game under your belt. That's not the first. That's not the first playoff game you want on your docket. I would not want to see Cleveland in the divisional round if I were the Baltimore Ravens. They won't say that, of course, publicly, but if I'm in the back of my mind, if you give them the truth serum and the teams that you don't want to see, Cleveland Browns would be top of that list because that team could travel and beat anybody. Matter of fact, think about this: Cleveland has beaten San Francisco and Baltimore, both of them. And what they've done with this coach, Kevin Stefanski, absolutely 1,000% should be coach of the year. 1,000% should be coach of the year. He's had four quarterbacks. Four. Now the four quarterbacks. Joe Flacco was on a couch somewhere, and is playing, playing good, excellent football. And again, we've seen this movie before in the NFL. Trent Dilfer, 2000 Ravens. People forget behind that all-time great defense that they had, and Jamal Lewis, who's an excellent running back at the time. They went through a bunch of quarterbacks. Tony Banks. They went through about 2 or 3 quarterbacks that year. And Dilfer kind of came in, managed the game, made a couple plays. Didn't lose. Basically, didn't lose the game, and next thing you know, he's winning the Super Bowl. He was a journeyman quarterback. Nick Foles, Doug Williams way back when with Washington. Doug Williams was put in I believe right before the playoffs or mid-season, right before the playoffs. Doug Williams was not a starter that year going into that season. That was excuse me. That was the strike shortened. I believe that was the strike shortened season as well. And of course, most recently, Nick Foles with what he did in Philadelphia after Carson Wentz got hurt, leading them to the Super Bowl and winning, playing just tremendous football. He had one of the great recent playoff runs in recent memory with the type of football that he played, and just got on a tremendous role, and in essence outplayed Tom Brady in the Super Bowl and won the Super Bowl MVP. So we're talking this. So it's happened before. I mean, I can go back even Jeff Hofstetter with what he did with the 91 Giants. People forget Phil Simms, who was a Super Bowl MVP a couple of years prior, was injured. Jeff Hofstetter let him, help lead him to the Super Bowl. So it's not out. If you have a great defense, if you can run the football, and then you combine that with a guy who's actually won the Super Bowl and has led a team to the Super Bowl, then you have a chance. You have an excellent chance. And Flacco is not going to sniff the Hall of Fame. We know that. If Flacco could win, he could win the Super Bowl MVP this year and not get in the Hall of Fame. He's never been All-Pro. He's never even been a Pro Bowler. But Flacco won a lot of games in Baltimore, played in a lot of big games. He has a 10-5 career playoff record. He's going on the road and beating Tom Brady. The man knows how to win. That's all there is to it. He knows how to win, and he will not be shook in any way, shape, way, or form in the postseason. He won't be. I promise you. He will not be shook. So that team, to me, I'm looking at the Cleveland Browns as a problem. They are that team is physical. And again, any given day, they can have the best player. Myles Garrett can be the best player on the field anytime the ball is snapped. He's that great. He literally could be the best player on the field at any time when you step on that field. That's how dominant he is. So Cleveland is a major problem. They can choose. They can rest. They can choose to do what they do with this week. They actually clinching early for them benefits them because they actually can. They will have to, of course, play next week in the wild card round. They don't get the luxury of having to bye like the Ravens or the 49ers. So Cleveland actually is in a great spot just to rest their players and get ready for next week. And I don't care who they play next week. Like I said, I expect Cleveland to win their wild card round and they will be a major problem for whoever they play, whether it's Baltimore or whether it's whoever clinches that number 2 seed, or it could be the Bills, or even the Bills or the Dolphins. Cleveland's a team that I would not want to see. As far as stock up, looking at the NFC, I would say the Rams. Again, they have a quarter. They will go into the playoffs, and they're going to be the only team with a quarterback that has won a Super Bowl in Matthew Stafford, and they're playing great football right now. Matter of fact, we'll talk more about the Rams, but that they definitely are definitely a stock up as far as how they're playing. Who won the week? The Los Angeles Rams. The Rams had a great season, to say the least. We've been talking about them a lot over the course of this podcast this season. Believe that they won the week I think last month, or maybe I don't know, late October, early November. I think it was November. It wasn't December. It was November. But the Rams clinch a playoff berth at 9-7. They again are a team that is not afraid of playing, not afraid of some physicality. This is where player development comes in handy, as if you're a Rams, if you're somebody who watches sports and pays attention to that type of stuff. They're going to have a rookie receiver who went over 1,000 yards, who had a phenomenal year, who should be a Pro Bowler. This is despite the fact that we know they don't have had not had a first round pick in forever. and have lost, almost all of their talent off that Super Bowl team from a couple of years ago, minus Stafford and Cooper Kupp. So give the organization a lot of credit. Give McVay a lot of credit. They win the Super Bowl. They had one bad year, and they back in the playoffs again, 5th time in, I believe, 7 years that the Rams are in the playoffs. They've been a stalwart in the playoffs as far as a postseason team. They'll be a tough out because they're not afraid of anybody. They played, with the exception of the Dallas game, they played a lot of top teams very well. They played San Francisco well. They played Philadelphia well. They could have easily beat Baltimore a couple weeks back in that wild game that went to overtime in Baltimore. They probably outplayed Baltimore. Probably should have won that game. So the Rams are not afraid of anybody. They've been phenomenal this year. Considering coming into the season, I had no expectations for the Rams whatsoever. I really thought that this could be 5-12. That they could be 5-12. Maybe at best 6-11 type team. I did not have any high hopes, have any expectations for the Rams whatsoever. I thought this would be a rebuilding year. I thought they would move Stafford out and go in another direction in terms of 2024. But again, Stafford has played well. We know how good Coach McVay is, and they've kind of reinvented themselves a little bit with some young pieces on the defensive end, and offensively, again, developing that second receiver to complement Cooper Kupp. Cooper Kupp was a big piece of their in terms of their season, of their success, and considering the fact that Aaron Donald, quiet as kept, is no longer, he's very good, but he's not dominant. He wasn't dominant this year. Like Aaron Donald he didn't jump off the page this year. He's still in the conversation, one of the top defensive players still in that conversation where you still have to respect him, and he still get double teamed, but he wasn't like overpowering. It wasn't. I'm not sure that he'll even be all pro this year, to be honest with you. So give the Rams a lot of credit, and they, to me, had them winning the week. Couple of thoughts before I let you go. So it was feast and famine with the college football. Let's deal with the ugly part. What transpired on Saturday at the Orange Bowl was absolutely an embarrassment for the sport, and you know what I'm talking about. What Georgia did to Florida State, that 63-3, just annihilation, the largest blowout in bowl history. That wasn't a real game. And listen, as a Florida State fan, I saw it coming a mile away. Like, Florida State was missing like a third of their players. It had 20 opt-outs. About 6 to 8 of them are NFL, or maybe even 10 of them are legit NFL prospects. I mean, Florida State probably is going to have at least 5 or 6 first-round picks this year in the NFL draft. They had a loaded team this year. So I knew Georgia would beat the brakes off them. Listen, these bowl games just don't matter. Minus the college football playoff, these bowl games don't matter. And to me, they haven't mattered in almost a decade. Not only should the college football playoff next year expands to 12, it should be frankly 24. Just eliminate all of these bowl games minus the college football playoff, to be honest with you, because they don't matter. These guys are not these opt-outs, transfer portals. Like the teams that you see in the bowl games are not even remotely resemble the team that you see in the regular season. So I didn't even watch any of the bowl games minus the college football playoff. And you're talking to somebody who loves college football, who used to be. I used to be a bowl guy, where I would watch the Motor City Bowl or the Holiday Bowl or certain bowls that I didn't watch every single bowl because it got to a point in college football where it was too many bowls. There was a certain group of bowls where, minus the New Year's Day 6 and minus the college football playoff, there was about 3 or 4 bowls where I was like, all right, I'll give this a look. Fourth quarter, second half. This year, it wasn't the case at all. I have zero interest in none of I don't have any interest in any of these bowl games minus the college football playoff because none of the players are playing. And by the way, I don't blame any of the players for opting out and getting ready for the NFL like that. I'm not knocking the players; they're just taking advantage of the current system. I ain't saying taking advantage of it. They can opt out, and they have no problem. I don't have no problem with it. I had no problem with them. I would opt out too and get ready. I wouldn't risk injury for the NFL draft. I wouldn't risk injury for the NFL draft for a bowl game. I can see their perspective, but the bottom line is just eliminate all the bowl games and just go to 24. Just go to 20. Just go to the 24 2014 playoff. And if you're not good enough to make the 2014 playoff, then so be it. Then you know what? That creates more fire and more juice in the regular season. And teams play, and the games will be that much better because teams will know we're not going to a bowl game unless we make the 2014 playoff. So I don't want to see any of these bowl games moving forward. I have no interest in them. They do nothing for the sport. None. I don't want to see any of the bowl games minus the playoff games. Period. So 12 would not be enough. They need 20. Just go to 24, and that's it. Don't because at some point, you can't do more than 24. Because then you're talking about cutting into the regular season. Go to 24 and create more juice for the regular season. There's already a lot of juice in the regular season as it is with the trying to decide even these 4 playoff teams. Imagine that. Imagine what August to November would be if there were only 24 spots available for all these teams. So I think that'd be a win-win for college football in general. And every bowl game would count, would mean something. Every bowl game would mean something. And again, you would have, there would be a couple guys that would opt out, but for the most part, the guys would be trying to up their draft status playing in these bowl games. Playing in these playoff games, and the other guys can just get ready for the draft. It's very simple. It's a very simple solution to me. It's not complicated at all. I don't have to go Chip Kelly to figure this out. It's not brain surgery. It's not hard to figure out what needs to be done. You need to eliminate these bowl games because they don't matter. They just don't. The average fan does not care, especially during the holiday season, about these bowl games. Even with nothing, even if you're on vacation, you sit at home flipping channels. If you turn on LSU Wisconsin and Jay McDaniels is not playing, why am I watching that game? I'm watching the game to see Jay McDaniels to see, can his skills translate to the next level. Oh, you're not playing? Click. See ya. Week 18 NFL, quick preview of that. There are 5 divisions that will be on the line. You have the AFC East, the AFC South, NFC East, and 3, not 5. We're not talking about 5. I'm sorry. 3 divisions that will be on the line. 3 divisions that will be on the line. AFC East, AFC South, AFC East, AFC South, and the NFC East and NFC North. So 4 out. So half the divisions are still up for grabs, which is a great place for the NFL. Certainly with the NFL, if you're in the NFL, you want to be in that. This is what you minus the amount of quarterbacks that have been missing this year. This is what you love. This is what you love. Having a week 18 of some meaningful football. And having more than half the divisions still up for grabs. Again, I'm not going through all the permutations and scenarios of what can possibly happen. We talked about the AFC East. Miami wins. They are clear-cut number 2. They're clear-cut number 2. If Buffalo wins, Buffalo can move up and possibly be a number 2 if Buffalo wins. So if Buffalo wins, they are guaranteed the division. So Miami wins, they guaranteed a number 2 spot. Buffalo wins, they guaranteed a playoff spot. It's going to be interesting to see what Baltimore does in this game against Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh, of course, needs the game, right? Pittsburgh's going to need the game against Seattle. Excuse me, against Baltimore. And of course, Pittsburgh's going to need a game against Baltimore, so that's why Pittsburgh is on for Saturday. So we'll see what Baltimore. I told you I would probably play Lamar Jackson probably maybe a half, maybe a quarter, maybe a half. We'll see how they play it. But you have, again, the big game of the day. You have Buffalo at Miami on a Sunday night. That's the big one. Then you, of course, Minnesota. Yeah, Buffalo, Miami on Sunday night. Houston, Indianapolis will be for the division. Has a chance to be for the division if Jacksonville loses to Tennessee, which is certainly possible with the way they've been playing lately. Tampa Bay, Carolina could be Tampa Bay, Carolina, Atlanta, New Orleans. So listen, there are a number of matchups that a lot of these divisional matchups are going to decide these 4 divisions. Going to the playoffs right now, everybody's going to tell you, going to this last week and soon to be the playoffs, don't get caught up in the Baltimore hype as far as heads and shoulders above everybody. They're not heads and shoulders above everybody. They're not. This has been a wild NFL season. This has been as unpredictable of an NFL season as it gets. You look at this, like, if you look at the standings, right? Look at the league standings. Okay, Baltimore's 13-3. San Francisco is 12-4. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You have 7 teams between 11-5. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. There are 12 teams between 11-5 and 9-7. 12 teams between 11-5 and 9-7. And that's not including the 8-8 teams. I'm just talking about the teams that have the winning record. So it is like, again, there's a couple of god-awful teams at the bottom. But there are 12 teams that are between, like I said, you have 12 teams. Think about that. Between 11-5 and 9-7. And all those teams are fighting for playoff spots. But not all teams. A lot of teams, a few of those teams are fighting for playoff spots. So just you get in the playoffs, you can do some damage if you get in the playoffs. Again, outside of Philadelphia Eagles, any team that gets into the playoffs can do some damage. Outside the Eagles, I have no faith in the Eagles. But you're going to hear this theme, this narrative that, is Baltimore and everybody else. Is not. Even in the AFC, trust me, it's not. And I'm going to say this too. If you're Baltimore, the worst case scenario is if you have a situation where Kansas City, Buffalo, and Cleveland are all in the playoffs. Right now, you have Cleveland and Kansas City. If Buffalo gets in the playoffs, I'm going to say this right now. If you have a situation where you have Cleveland, Kansas City, and Buffalo in the playoffs, I don't think Baltimore can get through that gauntlet, to be honest with you. I'll be perfectly honest with you. Because all of those teams match up with Baltimore. Cleveland, Kansas City, as poorly as Kansas City's played, they match up with Baltimore because of their defense. So, again, I think that I don't even know right now how many. Like, it's hard for me to say how many teams can win the Super Bowl right now because Philadelphia is gone. If you ask me right now how many teams could win the Super Bowl, I would say Baltimore. I would say Kansas City in the AFC. NFC, I would say San Francisco. I think there are 3 teams that can win the Super Bowl right now. I don't think Kansas City can win the Super Bowl. I don't think Miami can win the Super Bowl. I don't think Buffalo can win the Super Bowl. So I think 3. I have Baltimore, Cleveland, and San Francisco. Those are 3 teams that can win the Super Bowl. That's going to wrap it up for this latest edition of the Real Deal Podcast, the first of 2024. Enjoy the rest of your day. So long.